Hey homeschoolers, this is Jim Pence with See the Light, and welcome to our new series, Digital Art Projects. And what we're going to be doing in this is each month we're going to be focusing on one aspect of digital art, and we're going to be doing different art projects using that particular technique or that aspect of digital art, so you can get a real feel for how to draw on your computer or your tablet or whatever you happen to have. Now, I've done some episodes already on some of the basics of digital art apps and some of the equipment that you need, so you can refer back to those if you need to brush up. But I want to fill you in on what we're going to be using for starters, and then you can get get what you need to draw along with us. For software or app, now I normally, and if you watch the other episodes you know this, I normally work with an app called Procreate, and it's an excellent app, in my opinion, probably the best digital art app out there. But a problem with Procreate is it only works on an iPad, and so that kind of restricts what others can do if you don't happen to have an iPad or don't want to spend the money on it. So for this series, we're going to be using a program called Sketchbook. One of the great things about Sketchbook, and that's what you see on your screen right now, is it is totally free. It used to be a subscription app, but now it is completely free, and it's also cross-platform. You can use it on if you have a Windows PC, or if you're working on a Mac, or if you do have an iPad, there's a version for that if you're working on Android. So if you're wanting to really plug into this series of art projects, then it really doesn't matter what kind of equipment you have. This app will work with it. So I'm going to show you, for starters, just how we're going to get, or how you can get that app. I've got the website right now up there, sketchbook.com, and you'll notice Sketchbook goes free is the headline, and all you have to do is download it. Now, when you download, you're going to get excuse me, it's still allergy season in North Texas. You will get what it looks like a trial version, and the only thing you need to do to get the permanent Pro version is to set up an account with Autodesk. That's the company that makes Sketchbook, but it does not cost anything to set that account up. It's just that's the requirement if you want the full version, and I do recommend the full version. And I'm not going to read all this. You can go check the website out on your own later. But Autodesk Sketchbook is what I'm going to be working with. I'm working on a PC, a Windows 10 PC, and I'm using a Wacom Intuos Pro tablet, graphics tablet, with a pressure-sensitive stylus. That said, let me just orient you to Sketchbook. Over here we have a very sizable brush library, and you'll see as I go down through, there's pencils and markers. There are texture brushes, shape brushes, all sorts of, even glow brushes, smudge brushes, designer, artist, and if you just keep scrolling down, you've got crayons, and a lot more specific ones. Like I've got leaves here, and snow, and snowflakes, and all sorts of things that you can get quite creative. There's some clouds, textures, and these are all custom brushes made by different artists that I have on my system, and I'm not going to show them all to you right now because we're going to be pretty much sticking with the basic brushes for most of these tutorials. So that's the brush library. I'm going to close that down. I'm going to try to close that down. There it goes. Then I've got my color editor over here. That's just going to let me pick colors, and that's pretty simple. We'll talk more about color theory and some of the different aspects of what colors to use down the line. I'm going to leave that up. Here is a layer panel, and depending on the program that we're going to do, or the project rather that we're going to do, sometimes we will use, or in fact often we'll use multiple layers, so I normally have my layers panel up. For today's project, I'm not going to have that up, so with that in mind, then I come over here, and these little things that have, it's hard to describe what they look like, but they're called pucks, like a hockey puck. And one is for color, and it lets you adjust the hue, the saturation, the color, and it even lets you go grayscale down here. Just makes things a little bit easier as you're working, so that you're not always having to come over here to this color editor. In fact, let me just shut that down since I've got the color puck up. And I can come in here, tap that, and do whatever I want to. You notice there's a little eyedropper down there. That's a color picker. So if I happen to have something up here with a lot of different colors, and I want to choose one that I want to work in, then I can just tap that, and it's going to the color picker is going to pick that up. For what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to set it on black. And then the other puck is for your brush, and what it does is it's going to let me use a different kind of brush here just to show you. Let me pick up a marker brush. If I press down on that and then just slide the cursor over, it changes the size of my brush. And likewise, if I go the other direction, then it's going to make it smaller. And so that's, and this is an eraser. And let's say I want to make my eraser bigger. And I get some of that stuff out of there. Might want to keep that in the middle just so I can go both ways. There we go. Get that eraser big and get everything off there. All right. And there's a bunch of other stuff and a bunch of stuff up here that I'll explain as we use the different aspects of the app. But we're going to start out by creating a new document or a new painting. So I'm going to come up here to File, New, and it's asking if I want to save the changes, and I'm going to say no. And then when I come up to New, I'm going to work on my image size here. I want to choose, we're going to be doing in this this episode and some of the next ones, we're going to be using the Symmetry tool to create some cool designs and some mandalas and things like that. And for a mandala, I want to have a square canvas. Now I've got all these numbers here. I've got pixel dimensions, I've got document size. What are we going to use? Well, we're going to, I'm going to work with inches. And I'm going to turn off Keep Proportions because I want a square image. And I'm just going to select a 10 by 10. Whoops, something came up there. I don't even know how I got that. Now let's go. I'm going to go 10 inches by 10 inches. And then the other thing to note, and you notice up here it's 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels. And that's because my resolution right now is 100 pixels per inch. It depends on what you want to do with the image. If you're just wanting it for online, 72 pixels an inch per inch is probably good for you. That's pretty standard for online images. If you want to print it, then you want to come up to 300 pixels per inch. Okay, so I've got a square canvas, and I can turn that back off. And so what we're going to do in today's lesson is create a very simple kind of a flower design using the Symmetry tool. Okay, my brush, I've come over here to the larger brush library, and I've chosen a traditional brush, and it's a medium brush. I'm right now working in black. I may want to shrink that down just a little bit. Let me see here. See if I can reduce that size a little bit. That's pretty good. And then the erase what I put down there. All right, to create a flower or that kind of a design, we're going to use the Symmetry tool, which is these two squiggly lines with a dotted line in between. And you notice when I click on that, I get a submenu with a lot of different options. If I click on that first one, then it gives me vertical symmetry. So whatever I draw on one side is repeated on the other. If I click the other and have horizontal symmetry, the same thing. Whatever I draw on one side is repeated on the other, but it's horizontal. If I click both of those, then I have a kind of a four-way symmetry going. So let me take that out. All right, and I'm going to turn those off because what I want to use is a little wider or broader symmetry with a number of different elements. Now I've chosen 8 here. It really depends on how complex you want your picture to be or want your mandala. You could go with 4, which is what we just had. You could go with 3, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I mean, you can go all the way up to 16, which is really detailed. 8 is really nice. I find it works really well. If I can get up there, there we go. So that is the setup we're going to work with. And if I didn't want to see the dotted lines, I come over here and I can turn those off. But I kind of like them because it helps me plan out my design a little bit. So I'm going to start kind of close into the center. And now as I do this, there is no right or wrong way to do it. So once you have set up your own canvas, then just draw along. Now right now I'm drawing in black. So I'm going to start right on that vertical line there. And you'll see as I draw, it's drawing right along with me. And I'm going to kind of bring that in right down to the center. Now, because of the way I'm going to color this image in a little bit, I want to come in here. In fact, I'm going to zoom in a little so I can see it better. And I'm going to connect that. So I almost have the center of a little flower there. Now, one thing that I can use, and that's another tool that's part of the Autodesk Sketchbook toolbox, is something called Steady Stroke or Predictive Stroke. I'm going to use Predictive Stroke here. And what it's going to do is it's going to kind of smooth out the strokes that I make as I draw. Okay, I'm going to start again right at that same place. Going to come up, going to curve back in, and now you see that time it smoothed it out, made it more of a natural curve. Okay, and let's see. Let's start about halfway through here. I'm going to come up, connect, and come down in, and again. So you can have a lot of fun with this as as you draw and play around with different designs. You can get much more complicated than I am here. And there we go. Okay, now I'd put a little squiggle in there. It decided that it didn't want that. It was, again, it's basically trying to smooth out my stroke. So it that was just something that I could decide to undo that, but I'm going to leave it as is. I'm going to zoom out a little bit more. Now, again, you can get much more complicated, but I wanted to give us something that was fairly easy to start with. Okay, let's make sure that's all on. When you go to another on another tool, it will at times turn off the others. So you have to be careful that you remember to turn them back on. And I'm going to bring one more down that way. And I believe that's going to be my design for this project. I could bring it all the way out, but in this case I don't really want to. So I'm going to turn off Symmetry. I'm going to turn off Predictive Stroke. And one thing I want to do is I want to zoom in, and I want to make sure that there aren't any little gaps, because I'm going to use a flood tool to fill in the colors here in a minute. And I don't see any gaps. What I do see are some little things here that I'm not crazy about. So what I want to do is, you can see how big my eraser is right now. I don't want to have one that big because it's gonna pretty much wipe out anything I drew. So I'm gonna shrink that down. It's still a little large. Let's bring it down fairly small. I need a little precision here. Okay, and let me move that out of the way. Now I think I can come in and gently remove some of those little places that I overlapped. Oh, see, I forgot and I turned off the Symmetry tool. Had I left the Symmetry tool on, then actually I could erase one and it would take care of all of them. So again, got to remember when you're turning things off that you might not always want to. Okay, now the other thing I see that might be a problem is right down here. I don't want to erase at this point. I'm going to go back to my brush, and I want to fill in that one little gap, because if there's a little bit of a gap, then the color is going to flood in a way I don't want it to flood. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now let's try a little color, and for that I'm going to go over to the Flood Fill tool. You'll see there's some different options for linear and radial fill and stuff like that. We're not going to mess with that. We just want a good solid fill here. And let's go with a kind of an orange. And you'll notice I've got to get the colors. There we go. I want to get the color so that it looks good. So I've got kind of a palette there. All right. Now what I'm going to do with that flood tool, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to just tap inside each of these like that. Now to go to the next level, I'm going to change the color just a little bit, make it a little darker, a little bit more orange, and come in here and just tap in each one of these, and I'm going to move this over to even a redder. And then our final petals on the outside here. And then just for a little contrast, we're going to hit that right in the center. And there you have a very simple floral design. Nothing complicated, and it's actually pretty basic, but I wanted to start with something pretty basic this particular time. Now, just to finish it off, I'm going to choose a dark green here. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to click in here. Let's see. I like that. Actually, I think I'd like it a little bit darker because I want that flower to show up better. Try even darker. There we go. All right, so our first project is just a very simple flower design using the Symmetry tool. Now, again, the emphasis here is on simple. We can do an awful lot more, and we will. But for starters, your assignment this week is to create your own flower. You can use a design similar to what I did, or come up with something more complex or simpler, just depending on whatever you like. But this is our first step in creating some pretty awesome designs. So get your tablet, get your pressure sensitive stylus, your PC, or your whatever you're going to be using to draw on, and go have some fun. I'll be back next week and we'll see what else we can do in terms of the Symmetry tool and creating some really cool variety and design. I'm Jim Pence with See the Light. Thanks for watching.